Welcome to Mental Health and Faith, a Closer Look. I am Carolyn Cooper. This podcast and YouTube show addresses issues related to mental health and wellness, recovery, our spiritual journey, and what the Bible teaches about living in this complicated world. I also welcome pastors, writers, mental health professionals, and others to come on my show to share how God has navigated them through some challenges in life and how He has given them the power to overcome. Thank you for being here today. Now sit back and enjoy the show. Hi, this is Carolyn, and welcome to another episode of Mental Health and Faith, a Closer Look. I'm very excited that you're joining me for this episode today because we are going to learn some great information on how to handle anxiety in our lives. My guests today are Debra Schwietert and Annette Bifulco, and I will let them correct the pronunciation of their names when they introduce themselves. But they have a book that I am very much looking forward to reading through and digging into. It's called Empower the Warrior Within. And we're going to jump right in and let them introduce themselves first. So, ladies, can you each briefly share a little about your background? And I'd also be interested in hearing how you met and how this book came to be. So, Deb, why don't you start?
Okay, sure. I was a teacher, public school teacher for over 20 years. Um, got a doctorate and wrote a dissertation. So that was kind of my writing experience coming into this work. I met Annie at therapy, and I'll let her share her side
Mhm.
of that. But I think it was kind of a setup. Our therapist wanted us to meet. She's smiling. Um, I think that this was kind of his plan, is to get us together and see if something would develop out of that. And it just kind of naturally happened as he retired at the end of our program. And then after that, he had us all share phone numbers. So I called Annie up in January and I said, "Hey, Annie, you want to put some scriptures into that program?" And she was like, I'll let you take it away from there, Annie."
Right.
Um, she said, "Well, I've been wanting to write this into a book for 7 years."
Wow.
And I'm like, "Oh, okay, well, let's go. Let's do it." And she looks at me with these like deer in the headlight eyes. And I'm like, "Okay, we can do this." And we had it done by June that year.
Mm.
During COVID.
Very good.
Yes.
Good use of your time.
Yes, writing a book on anxiety during a COVID. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, Deb. All right, Annie, let's hear your side of the story.
I was, my background is my introduction to mental health was working in residential treatment. And I joined the same program that Deb was in. I want to say that we met in 2008 or 18, my second time through the program. I had previously gone through an anxiety program, the same one in 2013. I had horrible anxiety. And the therapist who created the program asked me to try and take the information that he had written, it's secular information, and put it into a biblical format, because we had a lot of conversations about how the information was based in scripture, how everything in here God teaches his people to do. And so I went through the program a second time as a co-leader and to do research for the rewrite. And that's where I met Deb. And together things just kind of clicked. And she ended up calling me after the program, after I had been praying about how to go about writing this book. I had no experience on the technical side of writing, and she had a degree in curriculum. So God just worked that all out, and we decided to partner and help each other out and wrote this book.
That is an incredible testimony of how God brings people together at the right time for the right purpose. Thank you so much for sharing that. Um, your book is basically then taking a secular curriculum and converting it into a Christ-centered approach, right? And
Absolutely.
you state in the book that empower the warrior within will help you identify the root thought patterns that lead to anxiety. So, for just to make sure we all are kind of on the same page, when you say anxiety, can you kind of define what you mean by that and what signs or symptoms people might have? Because I think sometimes people think, oh, I'm just worried about this, when in actuality, they may be suffering from either a clinical or situational kind of anxiety. Annie, since you have shared that you experienced anxiety yourself, would you like to start by sharing a little bit about what is anxiety?
Sure. So anxiety, there's a lot of definitions for anxiety, but
Mhm.
essentially, anxiety is a feeling of fear, dread, and uneasiness. And there is some healthy anxiety. We all need it to stay safe and to have wisdom. But chronic anxiety is unhealthy. And so some of the symptoms you're going to experience with anxiety is going to be rapid heart rate, sweating, not even, you could even have nausea, digestive issues, and tension, dizziness, irritability, restlessness. And if anxiety gets bad enough, you can experience panic. Panic would be like the extreme form of anxiety. And if it's persistent and interfering with your daily life, that's when anxiety becomes unhealthy and it's an issue. And very often, anxiety is oriented around the future, where as opposed to fear, true fear is on an identifiable threat that's there, that's real. Anxiety can be a fear of something that you don't even know is there, that's real or not. And you're going to often see a hallmark with anxiety will be very often, this isn't the only one, but for me, the most common one is going to be avoidance behavior. That's a very much an underlying red flag, is that repetitive avoidance of a
Mm.
situation or circumstance that I think doesn't get included in the definition very often.
Yeah, I was going to say that definition is wonderful, but the avoidance part, that's a little bit new for me, but now that you
Yeah,
say it, I can recognize that in my life. Deb, do you have anything to add to that?
Um, it's like thinking about those things, like Annie explained, but then just rethinking those same thoughts. And the more you do that, the worse your anxiety gets.
Mm.
So getting to the root cause of that and changing that is what the book is laid out to develop over the course of the book.
So you said the root cause. And root thought patterns is a phrase that I noticed when I was looking at the book. So, what is a root thought pattern, Deb?
Well, I would consider like the fallacious beliefs, the things that we think that are not true,
Mm.
but we think they're true. And maybe our mom said something to us all the time, like, you know, you're never going to be, like you can never be a teacher because you're not patient. Oh, okay. So now I can't be a teacher. Well, I ended up being a teacher anyway. But that thought was there until I decided, no, that's not true. I'm not going to accept that as a part of my beliefs. So you have to break those down. And sometimes a good friend or a therapist can help you do that where you don't always recognize them. They can be little minute things too that you change your daily life to go around. Like you don't want to be in a situation, so you change what you do so you don't experience that situation again.
So, as you were talking, I was thinking, you know, when you develop those root thoughts, to you, they're true.
Right.
And it also reminds me of thinking about the lies of the enemy that can
Exactly.
take those and make them even worse than
Yeah.
they are. I mean, I don't want to give him all the credit, but when we're struggling with those thoughts that we can't get away from, you think that's really true.
He knows our weaknesses, and that's his playground. He just
Mhm.
loves to dabble in that. And so when we start to heal and get better and get over these things, that's the thing that we have to keep in mind is that, there's scriptures in there, and that's the beauty of the field journal is there's a scripture for every week or two or three. I can't remember how many are in each one, but the scriptures help to strengthen that thinking and combat that.
So we're going to talk about the field journal in a little bit. But Annie, I want to get your thoughts and see if there are some specific examples of thoughts, because like you mentioned earlier, there's nothing new under the sun. And I think many people struggle with the same types of these thoughts.
Yes, I would say that at the root of you're almost always going to find that at the core of those fallacious beliefs, those lies, you're always going to find something that I'm not good enough. I'm too much. There's when you boil it down and you take it apart, it's always boils down to either I'm not enough or I'm too much. You're going to see this extremism from one end to the other, black and white thinking, or always never thinking. I always, they always, we always, you always, I never, you never, we never, they never. Really? Ever? Those are also red flags. So when you hear those key words, that you're basically that you can't handle something or that God can't handle it. And that is at the root of it, of anxiety. And we have this saying in the book, two of them that I think, don't believe everything you think. And 180 degrees from sick is still sick. It's the same line. It's a straight line. So when you go from one extreme to the other, and very often our fallacious beliefs are going to contain vocabulary that is in the extreme. I'm never enough. I'm always this, I'm always that. And those are the key words you're going to pick up on when hearing the fallacious beliefs running through your head. Does that make sense?
Yes. In fact, I'd like to share a personal story, which will be a confession. Just this morning, I said to my husband, you never help with that particular household task. He says, I want you to think about what you just said, because he recognizes for me a way that I learned this kind of thing that we're talking about is the all or nothing.
Yes.
And that is one of the things that I really struggle with in my own life, is that all or nothing. And mine is most of the time going to the not good enough. The too much, that's very interesting to hear you say, because that's not my particular issue. Mine is the not enough kind of issue. But I did this morning. I said that, and he held me accountable and said, think about what you're saying, because I've given him permission to do that. So we know that these root thoughts can affect our emotional state and especially our anxiety. So I'm wondering if you can share maybe a few more tips. You gave a couple of great lines to help us with that. Can you think of maybe some more tips you'd be willing to share? And especially, how does our Christian faith play a part in dealing with this? And Deb, why don't you start?
I'll start. Okay. Well, one of the techniques that we have written about in the book is the desensitization of different things. Like one of my experiences, well, how I ended up in therapy was going through the Eisenhower Tunnel on I-70 and seeing a picture of Princess Diana getting killed in it. And I grabbed the door handle and I thought, oh no, I'm not going to live like this the rest of my life. When I get home, I'm going to see Rex, which is God's perfect timing, because that was the same session that Annie was going to be in. So desensitizing is maybe you drive like under a bridge first. Try to, okay, yeah, I can do that. Or maybe I can drive through a really short tunnel I can actually see the end of. Then you do that. And so you step it up each time and give yourself time, and you do your breathing techniques. Your journaling is always good. And just being patient with yourself, but also pushing yourself a little bit to help you get past it.
So I want to kind of restate that to make sure that we're understanding what you're saying. If you have an issue in your life that causes you that extreme anxiety and you have your thoughts, you want to try to desensitize yourself to similar experiences so they will not trigger you
Yeah.
or remind you of the initial like traumatic thing that happened. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And so you do it in steps.
hmm You go little, and a little bit more, and then a little bit more, and
Okay.
then, I eventually was able to, now I drive through the Eisenhower Tunnel all the time.
Wow.
But, and I never had a problem before that. It was just this weird thing that happened. I think
Hmm.
God just needed me to be in that meet Annie.
Hmm. Where's I'm just curious, where's the Eisenhower
It
Tunnel?
is about 40 miles west of Denver, I believe, in the Rocky
Oh,
Mountains. So it's
okay.
going under a mountain and it's
Uh-huh.
1.2 miles long.
Oh, okay. I
Yep.
get that. All right,
And
Annie. I'm sorry.
nope,
Uh,
go ahead.
all right, Annie, I was going to ask if you have anything to say about this issue.
I think Deb brought the desensitization technique we talk about quite a bit, and she mentioned relaxation skills, and that is one of the at the beginning of the book, one of the first things you get to learn how to do. What's great is that the book starts out and it's kind of like baby steps, and you learn skills that build on each other, and then you can go back and use the foundational skills. And one of those is relaxation techniques, because when we focus, I think a lot of times with self-help books, it's it's oriented on one plane, but we are spiritual beings, right? We are created with a mind and a spirit and a body, and so we want to tap into all of those things to use them together because it's going to be so much more successful. And so we don't want to forget about our bodies. We experience anxiety in our body.
Hmm.
And so you think about the like when you talked about at the beginning, when you're feeling anxious, your body has consequences and feels it. So we want to take care of that. So learning different kinds of relaxation techniques to decompress the body and teach it to feel safe and what that means and that it is safe, and bringing your blood pressure down and nourishing yourself and quieting your mind and things, and learning very simple things to do that. Even like four square breathing is a great one to learn. And figuring out what it means to build a safe place, which sounds very cliche. It does. But like I said, the mind and body are connected. So when you get to build that space that can be imaginary, it can be real, and then you learn to recognize the sensation of when you image that place in your mind, that you're and learning to feel what your body is feeling when your mind is relaxed, when your mind is a little upset, and when your mind, and you take the time in a safe space to experience those in your body and teach yourself those sensations. I think that that's a really foundational skill that so few people learn. And it does sound a little bit silly at the beginning, but it's so foundational and so helpful.
I I am so excited to hear you talking about this because when I had an emotional breakdown way back in 2002 is when I kind of started my journey. I spent 10 days in a trauma unit at a psychiatric hospital, and one of the classes that we had was relaxation techniques. And you're right, it's a very foundational tool to help you cope.
Yes.
And like you said, to learn to identify how your body responds in different settings. So um, I definitely have to go buy that book now because because you're right. Relaxation techniques, this desensitization that you were talking about, those are two amazing tools that someone could use. Now, another thing that you've referenced is this field journal. So I would like to hear a little about that. And why do you think journaling can be helpful to someone who's struggling with these thoughts and anxiety issues? Deb?
Um, well, we came up with the idea because throughout the program, one of the things that we're asking people to do is respond to some questions to
Mm.
dig a little deeper and get those feelings out. And a lot of times it's very difficult because the questions hit to their heart and to hit where it hurts. And to get them to write about it, it's very difficult. We also in there suggest that they have a partner to go through it with because they need someone to support them. It can be traumatic depending on, what your anxiety concerns. So those questions are just repeated. They're at the end of the chapter, so you don't have to buy the journal, but they're in the journal with space to write, and then the scriptures, the memory cards are in the back, and then that all kind of fits together. And then the support partner then could get a journal as well and kind of help the person, go through and deal with some of those really hard issues.
So it's not necessary to have the field journal, but it sounds like if you want to really kind of dig in and uh, capture the process you're going through, that might be a really good resource. Annie, do you want to say more about that?
Sure. If you don't have experience journaling, it can be a very overwhelming. People just they're very averse to it. So we did actually get some requests for a field journal to kind of structure the process of journaling and to really prompt you and guide you through it and simplify that so that it's not so now for me, I'm an abstract journal. I just want to go with my words. You discovered I have a few words. But not everybody's like that. And, writing is a very kinesthetic process that moves your thoughts from your brain out and gives it a channel. God over and over, God expresses himself through written word to us. Writing to me is sacred. It is a sacred, and it is so helpful. It is such a great tool for healing. And on top of that, one of the really on a pragmatic level, the journaling, and especially the way that the field journal is set up, it records your progress, it records your story, and it acts as a way to so you're mining the data, you're recording the data so that you can go back and see how far you've grown, and you can see where you were. And if you're struggling with something in the future, you can go back and be like, wait a minute, I remember feeling this way. And you've got that now evidence recorded. Be like, I won this once before, or I was struggling with this before and I didn't do well. You know what I mean? So you've got that evidence recorded, and it's such a great tool to use for your growth.
We have probably about 10 minutes or so left. I want to hear your final thoughts. And
I think one of the things that Rex said, and when he retired, he did this program for 40 years and it works if you do it. And I think Annie and I, when we were writing, we're like, if you got this far, we're just applauding you because you're going to finish, and it's hard. This isn't light reading. And so we just applaud anyone who works through any portion of it. And it does not have to be done in the order of the book. If you're going through a grief process, you can jump ahead to that grief chapter, make it work for you. But it was kind of written like a study, like a Bible study. Annie, you want to talk about that?
That's what I was going to say. Yeah, I'm right on that. One thing I really want people to know is it works best with a partner or a small group. Obviously, you can read a book by yourself, and there are skills you can glean from it, and information too that can really give you some aha moments. But healing is not done in a vacuum. We are relational beings. God is relational. It is contrary to healing to isolate, and it's completely detrimental to the process. I think, and as relational beings. And a lot of the book has to do with building the skills to build relationships, because yes, we are hurt by people, but we are also healed with people. So in order to work through through the hurt, through the pain, through the issues, anything, it requires relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't want people to think like, well, I'm just going to pick this book up, read it. And it's not, I think anybody that promises you that from a book, that's run. And we're not promising that at all. But I do have a group of women that we've been together now for, oh my goodness, 8 years, maybe longer. And we started with this group, and we call each other Friends with Swords. That came from Deb when we were designing the title or the cover of the book. And I'm like, oh, I have a friend with a sword. And she said, you have friends with swords. And it became such a great metaphor because, scripture is a sword.
Mm-hmm.
And when we have friends with swords in our life that will fight with us and for us, and, scripture breathes, right. It's living and it's breathing. So my greatest encouragement was, let this become a tool in your arsenal as you as you find friends with swords.
It takes a lot of trust. You have to have those people in your support group. I mean, that trust level has to be really strong. Yeah. So if it's hard to connect, we understand. We want people to know it doesn't have to be a big group. Don't be intimidated by that. But certainly God can show you someone that you can trust, that you can work through some of these things with.
All right. So where do we find the book, and how do we connect with you all? Because you both obviously have a lot of wisdom and experience.
The book's on Amazon, and you'll have the links in the show notes. Mm-hmm. We also have a Facebook page that we can link on in the show notes as well. I'm having a website built. It's not ready, but once it's done, I will put it on that Facebook. I'll post it there.
I want to thank you for not only the information you shared, but for the vulnerability you have demonstrated, because that is also a part of the healing process, is when we're vulnerable about our own situations. And I really appreciate that. So thank you for being here today.
You're welcome. Thank you for having us on.
Yes.
We appreciate it.
Yes. God bless you. I hope you enjoyed the episode. Please subscribe and leave your comments, questions, and even suggestions. I would love to hear from you. Join the conversation on mental health and faith. Have a blessed day.